Hey everyone, and welcome to the 5 Bytes Podcast. I'm your host, Rory Monham. The podcast, as always, is brought to you by my sponsors. That includes Numescent, the inventors of the first and only cloud-native container management platform for Windows desktops, and also brought to you by Master Packager, an application packaging software that helps you build packages that end users love, enterprises want, and the Windows OS needs. If you enjoy the show each week, you have these awesome sponsors to thank. And now for some news. So I published last week's episode just before Patch Tuesday's January Windows updates were published. So these have had a while to bake now out in the wild. But this month saw 114 flaws addressed, including 3 zero-day vulnerabilities. A total roundup of the vulnerabilities that have been addressed includes 57 elevation and privilege vulnerabilities, 3 security feature bypass vulnerabilities, 22 remote code execution vulnerabilities, 22 information of disclosure vulnerabilities, 2 denial of service vulnerabilities, and 5 spoofing vulnerabilities. 57 elevation or privilege vulnerabilities is quite something, and 114 flaws in total is pretty substantial, but maybe not all that surprising given it is the first of the year, and I'm guessing during the holidays there's a little bit of a slowdown in terms of developing these patches. Just to highlight a few, first, CVE-2026-20805 is one of those zero-day vulnerabilities, and this is a desktop window manager information disclosure vulnerability. Unfortunately, this vulnerability is being actively exploited, so you'll want to get the security fixes in as soon as possible. And Microsoft said that exposure of sensitive information to an unauthorized actor in Desktop Window Manager allows an authorized attacker to disclose information locally. End quote. Microsoft says that successfully exploiting the flaw allows attackers to read memory addresses associated with the remote ALPC port. Next up is CVE-2026-21265, and this is a secure boot certificate expiration security feature bypass vulnerability. Microsoft has warned that Windows Secure Boot certificates that were issued in 2011 are near expiration, and systems that are not updated have increased risk of threat actors bypassing Secure Boot. As a result, the updates will address these expiring certificates and renew them. So, another reason why you'll want to get patched. This one, not actively exploited yet, but I'm sure it will be very quickly actively exploited once those certificates expire. Final one to highlight here, CVE-2023-31096. This is a Windows Agar Soft Modem driver elevation or privilege vulnerability. So it's said by bleepingcomputer.com that as part of the October Patch Tuesday, Microsoft previously warned of actively exploited vulnerabilities in a third-party modem driver that ships with supported Windows versions and said they would be removed in a future update. Well, these vulnerabilities were exploited to gain admin privileges on compromised systems, and as part of this month's Patch Tuesday, Microsoft has removed these vulnerable drivers from Windows. So you can expect this update to remove those drivers. And you may have noticed, the first two were CVE-2026. This was CVE-2023. So this is a pretty long-standing vulnerability that has been under exploit. So another reason you'll want to take this security update to secure yourself against the use of exploits leveraging this driver. Like I said, I'm about a week late on reporting about these patches. So they've had a while to bake, and boy, has there been some fallout and issues from this month's Patch Tuesday. So let's get into some of that. One of the first issues flagged after installing the Windows updates was something I actually encountered on Wednesday morning myself, and that was a breakage to launch attempts of Azure Virtual Desktops and Windows 365 Cloud PCs from the Windows app, and I believe it happened from the RDP client as well. And in my case and in others, it was just throwing an authentication error. Uninstalling the security update fixed the issue, but Microsoft also subsequently issued a known issue rollback, but have since issued out-of-band patches too, which, that's quite a remarkable turnaround. Usually there is an out-of-band patch like a week or a couple of weeks after Patch Tuesday, but these were released super quick. The out-of-band patches in this case were KB 507744 and KB50777797 and are available now via Windows Update and is rolling out to everybody. There are also some other reports of issues with Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 Cloud PC access that also now seem to be addressed. Some of the other issues that came about after the recent Windows updates includes devices with Secure Launch failing to shut down or hibernate. Now, this issue only affected Windows 11 version 23H2 and has been confirmed by Microsoft. And at the time of scripting this episode, which was Monday night, there is a workaround available. Microsoft is also reportedly investigating widespread reports that a January Windows 11 security update is causing the classic Outlook desktop client to freeze and hang for users with POP email accounts. Until a permanent fix is released to address the bug, affected users can work around it by uninstalling KB5074109 by opening up the Settings app, going into Windows Update, Update History, and uninstalling that KB. Do you really want to do that, considering the pretty high-profile vulnerabilities that are patched this month? Well, likely not, but you may have no choice if you are dependent on Outlook on that one device that you have, and you use a POP email account, which I'm sure a lot of businesses do still, at least small businesses. So, yeah, pretty unfortunate. Microsoft has reportedly resolved a known issue that was causing security applications to flag WinSQLite 3.dll as vulnerable to attacks exploiting a memory corruption vulnerability, that vulnerability being CVE-2025-6965. So once that file has been updated on your system, it should no longer flag in security products. So if you've been seeing through your third-party endpoint protection software that it's flagging for this particular DLL, once you get updated, it should no longer flag. I did not see specific details on why it started flagging and what the fix was, which is slightly concerning, I must admit. NeoWin.net reported that if you tried to check your work email on January 19th, you may have been blocked from accessing it thanks to a switch flipped by Microsoft that enables new security requirements for the Intune mobile application management service. The changes affect any app not running the latest SDK or wrapper version, the core Microsoft tools on Android and iOS, and the company portal app or on Android. On a technical level, Microsoft says the line of business and custom iOS apps using the Intune app SDK must update to the new version for iOS. Apps built with Xcode 16 need to use SDK version 20.8.0, while those built with Xcode 26 should use SDK version 21.1.0. For apps that rely on the wrapper, you must use version 20.8.1 of the Intune app wrapping tool. For apps built with Xcode 16 and for Xcode 26 apps, it's version 21.1.0. Now, to be fair, Microsoft has warned about this in the past, so hopefully that was a heads up to people and they got ahead of this. But for those who did not, you'll need to get updated if you are encountering this blockage. BleepyComputer.com has reported that ransomware attackers targeting a Fortune 100 company in the finance sector used a malware strain dubbed PDF Cider to deliver malicious payloads on their Windows systems. The attackers reportedly employed social engineering in their attempt to gain remote access by impersonating technical support workers to trick company employees into installing Microsoft's Quick Assist tool. Researchers at cybersecurity company Resecurity found PDF Cider during an incident response and described it as a stealthy backdoor for long-term access, noting that it shows characteristics commonly associated with APT tradecraft. Based on its assessment, Resecurity says that PDF Cider is closer to espionage tradecraft than financially motivated malware, and is built as a stealthy backdoor that can maintain long-term covert access and provide flexible remote command execution and encrypted communication. So that's a little bit worrying, particularly that it's a Fortune 100 company that got duped in this way. I guess it just shows that even large financial organizations, which typically are run like a well-oiled machine when it comes to their tech side, are not impervious to this type of breach. Doesn't bode well for the rest of organizations who don't have the resources the large financials do, though. Apple and Google have reportedly confirmed that the next version of Siri will use Gemini and Google Cloud in a multi-year collaboration between the two companies. In addition, foundation models will be based on Google's Gemini models for Apple and hosted on Google's cloud platform. In a press release, Google said, quote, "These models will help power future Apple Intelligence features, including a more personalized Siri coming this year." After careful evaluation, Apple determined that Google's AI technology provides the most capable foundation for Apple foundation models and is excited about the innovative new experiences it will unlock for Apple users. End quote. Apple says that Apple Intelligence will run on Apple devices and private cloud compute, and the company's long-standing privacy commitment is not being compromised, according to bleepycomputer.com. So this is really interesting because obviously Microsoft is pretty much in bed with OpenAI for Copilot, at least as of now, although that relationship does not seem all that stable given some comments that were made last year. But now it seems like Apple is kind of jumping into bed with Google for Gemini, which is probably a wise move because in terms of technology, it seems like Gemini is starting to perhaps surpass ChatGPT. Although I will say, I mean, in my testing, obviously like the image generation, the video stuff does seem to be superior in Gemini, but just for like text-based stuff, I don't find it all that compelling compared to ChatGPT. I think it does a worse job. But that's just my experience. I'd be interested to hear what other people think. OpenAI's $8 ChatGPT Go subscription, which gives you 10 times more messages than the free tier, is now available in the US and other regions. With ChatGPT Go, you can get, like I said, those 10 times more messages, but also file uploads and image creation, which is not available on the free tier. Unfortunately, even though this is a subscription tier and you are paying for it, ads will appear according to bleepycomputer.com, but OpenAI suggests that these ads will not influence the results. A little bit disappointing that they're going to have ads in a paid tier. I would expect that they'd put ads in the free tier, but at the same time, I guess I'm not all that surprised either. Recently, Jeff Bezos made comments about the demand for resource-intensive AI workloads and how it could result in PCs being run in the cloud to meet the resource requirements. I believe that also included for gaming as well, and not a surprise, I guess, because gaming is really being hamstrung by the demand for GPUs and memory, taking those away from the consumer market and affecting gamers. But some mainstream outlets covered the comments as though everyone would be running their PCs in the cloud, but it doesn't really seem like that was being inferred, at least from what I could read. At Microsoft Ignite in November, this future was already kind of laid out with Microsoft talking about their upcoming Kua feature, which is in limited preview now. Like you can only apply to preview it and try it out. It's not like insider builds or anything like that. The feature of Kua appears to use cloud PCs that AI can leverage on demand for executing some automated workflows. It is certainly not outside the realm of possibility, particularly with RAM becoming more expensive and harder to come by for consumers like I've covered in recent episodes. But wouldn't it be something if these large vendors who are gobbling up all the memory for AI data centers in turn strong-arm consumers to pay subscriptions for a hosted PC because they've completely decimated the consumer market and people can't refresh their hardware? Absolutely diabolical if this turns out to be the case and people are essentially forced to pay a subscription for a PC because the large vendors who actually supply the cloud-hosted PCs are taking away all the actual physical hardware resources. I guess we'll have to see how the next year or two shake out. But now, this episode's scripts, tricks, and tips. First up this week, I saw 4sysops.com published an article on free and open source alternatives to MDT, which seems timely to share since MDT has now been retired and you can no longer grab the installer and download it for yourself. And I know that MDT, while no longer in action or supported, people might actually already have it and just continue to use it. And this article suggests why that might be a bad idea. Next up, in the AI space, I saw that there's a Gemini CLI that has been published on GitHub. So if you'd like a command-driven experience for Gemini and you want to try this out for yourself, I'll share a link with this episode, and that is episode 423, and you'll find that at 5bytespodcast.com, or you can find the link in the description for this episode on YouTube. Finally, Ars Technica came with another article this week, because I think I shared one of theirs last week in the scripts, tricks, and tips as well. This one is 10 things I learned from burning myself out with AI coding agents. Now, I still found the article pretty interesting, but even the article itself kind of smells like AI helped formulate it. But I'll look past that because I think it's timely and also interesting, and you might too. But that's it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks all so much for listening.